Torres, and I am the head of the Development Policy Unit in the Development Division of the World Trade Organization. So, and as part of that work, I'm also the focal point of WTO's work on Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as work on the landlocked developing countries. So I think to answer this question is good if I would tell you a little bit briefly about the genesis of this report. And the WTO is one of the implementing partners in the UNIDO's Third Industrial Development Decade for Africa, or IDA 3. And this work also involves doing periodic reports on WTO's activities implementing IDA 3. And when we were completing our last report, we realized that there was a lot of interesting work being done by the organization to support Africa's trade capacity building and also its industrialization. And also given that we had an incoming African Director General, we thought it would be great to showcase some of this work in a publication. In fact, this was the first major publication that was launched by DG Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala when she came into the WTO, when she took office as our Director General. And the publication covers several areas of work of the WTO that we believe cover productive capacity building and industrialization. And we also need to bear in mind that just as we were finishing the draft of this report, we had the major event of the COVID pandemic. So we felt compelled to, at that stage, present what we were seeing actually almost in real time on the enormous impact that COVID-19 was having on the African economies. And while this report is mostly addressed at policymakers in African countries, but it is also addressed to academia and researchers because it presents a lot of useful information on the state of Africa's trade. But it also is addressed at the public at large, including small businesses who may be less familiar with the work of the WTO and how we can help them to conduct their activities. Besides showcasing the work of the WTO in Africa, there were various other objectives that we wanted to pursue. One was to analyze the contribution of trade to industrialization of African countries. And to do this, we looked at measuring the participation of African countries in global value chains. And more specifically, we tried to see what was the foreign value added content on total exports of certain African countries. So we did this for Morocco, Tunisia, and South Africa, and the analysis showed that effectively over time, the foreign value added participation in these countries' exports was increasing. That actually meant that they were incorporating more products that were coming from abroad into their exports, thus indicating that they were part of a value chain. Now, as I said, we only were able to do this for 3 African countries because we lacked the data in order for us to be able to do it in other African countries. So one of the results of this report was to actually try to institute a project whereby we would help African countries build capacity to report and to be able to collect statistics that would allow them to integrate into the OECD's trade and value-added database. And to do this, we're working with the OECD and with the UNECA, the UN Economic Commission for Africa. So besides looking at these traditional areas of work that are associated with trading goods, like, as I said, general participation in trade and implementation of a trade facilitation agreement and the capacity of African countries to meet sanitary and phytosanitary measures and technical standards. We also wanted to shine a light on other issues that don't normally get so much attention when we talk about African trade, such as intellectual property, government procurement, and very importantly, trading services. Yeah, I think that this is a great question. Well, one important benefit is to provide a predictable, non-discriminatory and transparent framework for government procurement in the countries that are party to this agreement. And therefore also it's an important contributor to building institutions in these countries. It would also have the added benefit of boosting investor and consumer confidence, because they can see that there's a regulatory framework to deal with the issues of government procurement, and it also is very important in how we can achieve efficiency gains for governments and for African countries when they are spending the taxpayers' dollars, or when they are spending financing that they may have received from development partners. So it's very important, this element that it allows them to get better value for money when they're doing tenders for procurement of different issues, including those that will help the government build infrastructure for trade, so further building their capacity. And then finally, and then I think that this is very important in the African country, because we're so concerned about the fight against corruption, and I think that having or being part of the government procurement agreement and implementing its provisions is a very important tool in the fight against corruption, because it greatly increases transparency in this very sensitive area of government procurement that we've seen can be very susceptible to corrupt practices. Now, one thing that I think explains a little bit to why African countries are not part of this agreement is because in many cases they are afraid to take on some obligations or some commitments because they don't believe that they may have the capacity to implement them. But in this sense, obviously the WTO is available to provide this technical assistance on capacity building for implementing these provisions, as we are doing for all the other agreements in the WTO. So yeah, trying to help countries alleviate a little bit the costs of implementation of some of these rules. we have several projects in the area of e-commerce, and this is obviously an area where members are increasingly requesting more assistance. Many of these concrete projects are being implemented through the enhanced integrated framework for the least developed countries. So what is the EIF that I'm just referring to? Well, the EIF is a partnership that we have with other international organizations, such as the World Bank, UNCTAD, ITC, and the idea is to help the least developed countries mainstream trade into their development. And there are several African countries who are least developed countries and participate in the EIF, and we have several projects in the area of e-commerce. And some examples of these projects are: we recently launched an e-commerce platform in Senegal called Boutique 221. And the idea is to connect small sellers to markets so that they can sell their wares more efficiently and reach markets. We're also working in Rwanda on working on payment systems for the benefit of business. I think that this is an area that is one of the big bottlenecks for e-commerce. Actually, exactly how to get an e-payment system that generates the trust of both the seller and the buyer. So I think that this is a key issue. I also have to say that in the area of e-commerce, it's important for African countries to engage in all of the discussions in the area that we have at the WTO. Including those that are aiming towards the development of rules in this area. And this is very important because we've heard many complaints about how in many cases African countries are rule takers and not rule makers. So the only way that you can really become a rule maker in the context of the WTO is to engage with the other members when conducting negotiations. And this is also very important because it would ensure that the areas that are of importance to Africa, in particular the closing of the digital gap, would be addressed in any new rules or agreements coming out of the WTO. So this is why I want to stress the importance of African countries participating in these discussions and engaging. So, I mean, we have several projects. Now, in the area of the traditional technical assistance that is delivered on the current agreement and implementation of the current agreements, at the moment, the regional physical events are still suspended. So we're conducting regional events only virtually, but we're already doing physical national workshops and seminars. But here we're very much dependent on the requests that we get from members. So, the message that I want to get across today is that, we're open for business in terms of capacity building and TA. So we need to get those requests, identifying what are the areas of priorities for African countries. We already received some of them, as I pointed out. E-commerce is an area of great interest, as well as issues of intellectual property and services are very high on the list of priorities of the requests that we have received so far. As I said before, when with the example of the EIF, the WTO hosts some partnerships that help build that capacity to trade. When it comes to the EIF, they're not just working on issues of e-commerce, but they have some other very interesting projects. Like, for example, for the West Africa, they are working with the farmers and processors of shea butter to enhance this export of shea butter for these countries. In Senegal, we're also working to build metrology and standards to comply with the different technical standards that may be required for their exports. In Zambia, we're helping countries to we're helping cooperatives establish linkages to the government. So, you know, the government can be more receptive to their needs and better be able to design policies that will address the needs of these cooperatives that group small producers. In Sierra Leone, we're working on tourism, helping to build 3 ecotourism sites, as well as renovating and equipping a tourism and hotel school in the country. And we're also working at the regional level. I think that there is great expectation on Africa about the coming into force of the African Free Trade Agreement, the AFCFTA, and we're working with the African Union to help African countries to develop their national strategies for implementation of this very transformative regional trade agreement. Codex Alimentarius. So the goal of this facility is to build capacity for countries to meet sanitary and phytosanitary measures and standards. And in this context, we're working, and they have many projects in Africa, including on the reduction of aflatoxin in corn of Burkina Faso, enhancing the capacity to meet SPS requirements, developing the laboratory and testing facilities to certify compliance of these measures in Uganda, supporting for fruit fly free areas in Mozambique and South Africa, and several other projects, including some that are being implemented at the regional level. Pretty soon we will also be hosting the global review on aid for trade, and this will take place during the week of 11 to 13 July, and this will allow us to review the work that is being done on providing and building trade capacity globally, and very particularly, of course, in Africa. So we will be working together in this review with development partners, including other organizations. The OECD plays an important role here, because they are the ones who have the database that allows us to measure the flows of aid for trade. But we also will be hearing from other organizations, including UNCTAD, as I said, ITC, the World Bank, the IMF, and very importantly, the regional development banks, such as the African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank.